Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving headfirst into, well, a really fascinating space where AI meets fundamental biology. Our subject is BioEmu. You might know it, that experimental AI model from Microsoft Research, the one focused on predicting 3D protein structures.
That's the one. It's the powerful engine doing the really complex prediction task.
Right.
But, our mission today isn't just about digging into the nuts and bolts of the AI itself. We want to go sort of beyond the core code.
Okay.
We're focusing on something maybe just as critical for actually using it. The web application built around it, the UI wrapper.
Ah, okay. So the user-friendly part.
Exactly.
Think of this deep dive, then, as your shortcut, a way to understand how a smart interface can take something incredibly complex, like this AI, and make it genuinely accessible. So you don't need to be a coding whiz to use it.
Right.
We're going to peek behind the curtain, see how this web app translates your, simple input into a prediction, and then into a visualization you can actually interact with.
Sounds good.
So let's start at the beginning. What's the basic biological problem here, the one BioEmu is trying to solve?
Right. It really comes down to proteins. They're like the workhorses in our cells doing almost everything.
Yeah.
They start as these simple chains of amino acids. You can think of them like beads on a string.
Okay.
But to actually do anything, to function, they have to fold up into these incredibly precise, complex 3D shapes.
And if the shape is wrong?
Then the protein doesn't work. Simple as that, really. The shape dictates the function.
So that shape determines if it's, say, an enzyme or maybe part of the cell's structure or something carrying signals.
Precisely. Everything hinges on that 3D structure. And predicting that shape, just from the sequence of amino acids, well, that's been a huge challenge in biology for decades.
A grand challenge, really.
Absolutely. And if you can crack that prediction, it's massive. It helps with designing new drugs, understanding diseases.
Even engineering new proteins from scratch.
Potentially, yes.
Sure.
It's fundamental.
Which brings us back to BioEmu. That's the AI built specifically for this prediction problem.
Right. It's the heavy-duty computational engine designed to figure out that folding.
But I imagine using something like that directly, it's probably not straightforward.
No, not usually. Interacting directly with these kinds of AI models often means command lines, specific data formats you have to get just right, setting up complex software environments.
A lot of technical hurdles.
Exactly. It can be a real barrier for, say, a biologist or a student who isn't also deep into computational methods.
And that's the gap the web app fills.
Precisely.
It's there, so you can tap into BioEmu's power without needing to write any code yourself.
And the source material tells us that the core of this web app's back-end logic, doing the work behind the scenes, it's built around a specific Python component.
Right. It mentions a Python class called BioEmuDemo. Is that like the main controller for the web app side of things?
That's a really good way to put it, yeah. It's basically designed to orchestrate everything from the app's point of view. Yeah, takes your input from the web page, manages sending it off to the actual BioEmu model, gets the results back, prepares them for display. It handles that whole flow.
Okay, let's pull back that curtain then. Talk me through this BioEmuDemo class. What happens when the app starts up? How does it manage things?
Okay, so when an instance of this class gets created, that happens when a user session starts. Essentially, the init method runs. Think of it as the setup phase.
Init, okay. What does it set up?
One key thing is it prepares a system to manage temporary files.
Temporary files.
Yeah.
It's the output.
Exactly. The 3D structure files BioEmu generates, maybe some intermediate data too, stuff that doesn't need to stick around forever on the server.
Makes sense.
And crucially, the setup includes a cleanup mechanism. There's another method, del, which is designed to run automatically. When the session ends or the BioEmuDemo object isn't needed anymore, it kicks in automatically.
Like it deletes those temporary files.
That's right. It removes them.
Kind of like tidying up your desk after you finish a project.
Exactly that analogy. It's really important for a web app. Imagine if every prediction from every user just piled up forever.
Yeah, the server would fill up pretty quickly.
So this automatic cleanup, it's sort of invisible to you as the user, but it's vital for keeping the app running smoothly and efficiently.
Okay, so setup and cleanup are handled nicely. What about the main event? Running the actual prediction. Where does that happen in the class?
That's the job of the run sample method. This is the function that takes your input, the protein sequence itself.
The string of amino acids.
Right. And also how many different structure predictions you want the model to generate.
And does it just immediately fire that off to the AI?
No. And this is another piece of really smart, user-friendly design. Before it does any heavy lifting, it validates your input?
Validates. Checks it.
Yeah, right away. Is the sequence box empty? Did you accidentally paste in some weird characters that aren't amino acids?
Why do that first? Seems obvious, maybe?
It saves you time, and it saves server resources. Think about it. If you made a simple typo, wouldn't you want to know immediately?
Yeah, rather than wait potentially minutes for the prediction to run and then fail.
Exactly. There's no point sending bad data into a complex, potentially time-consuming process. Fast feedback is key. Fail fast, as they say.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, input's good. What next?
Then, RunSample creates a special temporary directory on the server.
Another temporary thing.
Yes, but this one is like a dedicated workspace just for your specific prediction request. It's isolated.
Okay.
BioEmu will save all its files, intermediate stuff, the final PDB structures, right into this unique folder for this one job.
Keeps everything organized and separate, especially if multiple people are using the app.
That's the idea. Isolation is good design here. Then finally comes the main step. RunSample actually calls the core BioEmu sample model.
Ah, the handoff to the big AI.
Right. It passes along your validated sequence and the number of structures you asked for. This is where the real prediction magic happens.
Okay, BioEmu does its work. It finishes. How does RunSample get the results back to show me something?
Well, since RunSample created that temporary output directory, it knows exactly where to look.
Oh, okay.
It searches inside that folder for the generated 3D structure files. Usually these are in the standard.pdb format that's common for molecular structures.
PDB files, got it.
It usually looks for the ones the model has ranked as most likely, but it's smart enough to find other outputs if needed. This is how the app retrieves the AI's answer, essentially.
And it doesn't just give me a file name, right? The cool part is seeing the 3D structure in the browser. How does it go from a PDB file to that interactive view?
Good question. That's handled by another helpful function called Create Molecule Viewer. Once RunSample finds a PDB file, it calls this function. And Create Molecule Viewer uses a specific library called Py3DMol.
Oh, Py3DMol. Yeah, I've seen that used for web-based molecule viewers. It's pretty neat.
It's perfect for this. It takes the coordinate data from the PDB file and generates the code needed for that interactive 3D viewer you see right in your web browser.
So you can spin it around, zoom in?
All of that. And it even adds a little legend showing you what the different colors mean, like, carbon is gray, oxygen red, nitrogen blue. Standard stuff, but helpful.
Definitely. It makes that complex data instantly visual and explorable. That's a huge win.
It really is. Transforms abstract data into something tangible.
Okay, so we have the visualization. What else does RunSample do before it's finished?
Just about wraps things up. It creates a summary message that appears in the interface.
What kind of message?
It typically tells you, okay, we generated X number of structures, reminds you they're saved temporarily in that specific folder on the server, and points out which structure file is the one currently being shown in the 3D viewer.
So, context. Confirmation that it worked and what I'm looking at.
Exactly. Helpful feedback.
Okay, that covers running a prediction and seeing the result. But what if I want to keep those files? The PDBs, maybe logs, can I download them?
Absolutely. There's another method in the BioEmuDemo class for that. Download structures.
And its job is just packaging.
Pretty much. It gathers up all the relevant files associated with your prediction run.
Which files would that be, usually?
Definitely all the PDB structure files it generated, often log files too, which might have details about the run. Basically anything useful from that specific temporary output directory created for your job.
Okay. And how does it give them to me?
It takes those files and, interestingly, stages them in yet another temporary directory.
Why another one?
This one's just used for the zipping process. It puts the files there, creates a single .zip archive containing all of them.
Ah, zip file. Convenient.
Very. And then following that good principle we saw earlier, it immediately cleans up that temporary staging directory once the zip file is ready.
Always tidying up.
Right.
So efficient temporary file management, again, even for downloads. Gives you everything in one package, keeps the server clean.
That's the pattern. Good design for this kind of application.
Okay, we've gone deep into the back-end logic, this BioEmuDemo class doing all the heavy lifting. But for you, the user, you're just interacting with a web page. How does that front end, the thing you see in your browser, actually connect to all this Python code?
Right. That's the other crucial half of the equation. And the source material shows this interface is built using a library called Gradio.
Gradio. Why Gradio specifically?
Well, Gradio is really popular for this exact kind of task.
Uh-huh.
Building user interfaces for machine learning models. Its big advantage is you can often do it very quickly with surprisingly little code.
Easier than building a whole web app from scratch.
Much easier. It's designed to directly link UI components, buttons, sliders, text boxes to your Python functions, like the ones in BioEmuDemo. It bridges that gap really effectively.
So the layout, I see where the input box is, where the viewer appears. The buttons, that's all defined using Gradio's tools.
Yes, exactly. The code uses Gradio building blocks, things like gr.blocks to set up the main page structure, and then containers like grrow or gr.column to arrange the different elements neatly on the page. It's kind of like designing a simple web page layout.
And what about the specific things I interact with, the inputs and outputs?
Okay, for inputs, you'll typically see a gr.text box. That's where you type or paste your protein sequence.
Standard text box.
Then maybe a gr.slider. That makes it easy for you to just drag and select how many structures you want predicted, maybe from 1 to 5 or something.
Visual, easy to use.
And they often include a gr.dropdown menu, too. This lets you quickly load some predefined sample sequences. Really handy for just trying it out or looking at examples without finding your own sequence.
Oh, that's a nice touch. Saves time. What about clicking things? The buttons.
Yep, you've got the main action button. A gr button probably labeled something clear like generate structures. That's the trigger.
Okay.
And then another gr button for downloading, like download all results, which connects to that download function we talked about.
Makes sense. And the outputs. Where do the results show up?
You'll see another gr text box, often used to display status messages, logs, and that final summary message from run sample.
Right, the text feedback.
Then, for the 3D viewer itself, the interactive Py3D mol part that gets embedded using a gr.html component. HTML is the natural way to include rich web content, like that viewer.
Okay.
And finally, when you request the download, the link to get your zip file is provided through a gr.file component.
Got it. So Gradio provides all these building blocks. But how does clicking the Generate Structures button in my browser actually make the run sample function run on the server? What's the connection?
That's the magic of Gradio's event handlers. They're the glue.
Event handler.
Yeah. You configure them to say, when this happens in the UI, run that Python function. It links your actions directly to the backend code.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Remember that drop-down for sample sequences? When you select an item from it, a change event is triggered on that drop-down component. Gradio is set up so that this event calls a tiny function that just takes the selected sequence and puts it straight into the main input text box for you.
Seamless, automatic.
Exactly. And for the main button, generate structures. When you click it, a .click event fires. This event is linked to call a specific Python function, maybe a little wrapper function.
Right.
And that wrapper function's job is then to call the main BioEmuDemo.runSample method, passing along the sequence from the text box and the number from the slider. Your click directly starts the whole back-end process.
The download button is similar.
Same idea. Its .click event is wired up to call the BioEmuDemo.downloadStructures method.
So these event handlers are basically the bridge, transloading clicks and selections into function calls on the server.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
And the source mentioned a progress bar, too, while the AI is thinking.
Yes, that's another neat Gradio feature. The wrapper function that gets called when you click Generate can use grr.progress.
And that shows.
It allows the app to display a loading bar, maybe some messages like running prediction, right there in the interface. It keeps you informed that things are happening, that it hasn't crashed, gives you a rough idea of progress.
Which is much better than just staring at a frozen screen wondering if it's working.
Definitely improves the user experience for longer tasks.
Wow. Okay. So let's try and trace the whole flow again, just from the user's perspective. It starts with me interacting with the Gradio interface, right? Typing my sequence.
Right. Or selecting a sample, adjusting the slider. Then you click Generate.
That click via an event handler triggers methods inside that BioEmuDemo class running on the server.
Which first validates your input, checks if it's okay,
sets up that temporary workspace,
calls the actual powerful BioEmu AI model,
which does its complex folding prediction, saves the PDB results.
Then the BioEmuDemo class finds those results,
uses Py3D mol to create the visualization data,
sends that visualization data plus a summary message back to the Gradio interface,
which then displays the summary text, embeds the interactive 3D viewer using HTML.
And later, if you click Download, another event handler calls the download method, zips the files, and gives you the link via the gr.file component.
It really is quite an elegant orchestration.
It is. Taking something that complex validation, AI prediction, processing, visualization, download, and making it happen smoothly just from you putting in a sequence and clicking a button.
And it really drives home the point, doesn't it? How a well-thought-out user interface, built with accessible tools like Gradio, can unlock the power of something sophisticated like BioEmu.
Makes it usable for a much wider audience.
People who need the predictions but maybe don't have that deep computational background. That accessibility, like you said earlier, that seems like the key insight here.
Absolutely.
So that pretty much wraps up our deep dive today. We went beyond just the BioEmu AI model itself.
Right, focusing on the wrapper, the BioEmuDemo class handling the back-end logic,
And the Gradio library powering that user-friendly front-end interface.
and how they work together to make it all accessible.
You've hopefully gotten a good peek behind the curtain now, understanding the different pieces and how they connect to turn a complex scientific tool into something straightforward to use.
Seeing the structure behind the simplicity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the source materials we looked at really emphasize this combination. Powerful AI plus a thoughtfully designed interface equals accessibility. So here's a thought for you to take away. Think about other complex tools or software you use, maybe for work, maybe for fun. How does their interface, the way you interact with them, affect how easy or difficult you find them? How much does that design impact whether you can actually access and use their full power effectively? Something to mull over.